I arrived at the hospital 7 minutes after my father called me crying. I thought someone was dying. I was wrong. My parents looked straight at me and told security I wasn't family anymore. 3 days later, those same people were begging for my blood. I wish I could tell you that was the moment everything changed. It wasn't. Everything had started years earlier. That night was simply the first time they stopped pretending. When my phone rang, I was finishing the last patient from a 12-hour shift. I almost ignored the call. My father's name rarely appeared on my screen unless someone needed something. The second I answered, all I heard was panic. "Natalie, get to the hospital. Right now." The line went dead. No explanation. No names. Nothing. I didn't even change out of my scrubs. I grabbed my keys and drove faster than I ever had, replaying every terrible possibility in my head. Had my father suffered a heart attack? Had my mother collapsed? Was someone already gone? By the time I reached the emergency entrance, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The waiting area looked like complete chaos. Police officers, paramedics, people crying, doctors moving from one corridor to another. Then I saw them. My mother was sitting beside a wheelchair, tears streaming down her face. My father stood a few feet away, speaking to an emergency physician with the kind of desperation I'd never seen before. I ran toward them. "Dad!" For one brief second, I expected him to hug me. Instead, he lifted one hand between us, a silent order to stop. "Don't make this about you." I froze. "What?" His eyes never softened. "Ryan needs us." Only then did I notice my younger brother. His face was bruised. One arm was covered in blood. There were cuts across his forehead. He looked terrible, but he was conscious. A police officer standing nearby quietly told another nurse exactly what had happened. Single vehicle crash. High speed. Alcohol involved. No other victims. Ryan had wrapped his truck around a concrete barrier after leaving a party. He hadn't been unlucky. He had been reckless. I stepped closer anyway. "Is he going to be okay?" Ryan slowly turned his head toward me. Despite everything, despite the pain, he smiled, not because he was happy to see me, because he knew exactly what was about to happen. "You finally showed up." The words were quiet, but they landed like a slap. I ignored him. I wasn't there for Ryan. I was there because I believed my family needed me. A doctor appeared from the trauma unit. "We're taking him upstairs." Without thinking, I followed. Before I reached the elevator, my mother's hand wrapped tightly around my wrist. "Where do you think you're going?" "With you." "No." I looked at her, waiting for the rest of the sentence. It never came. She simply tightened her grip. "You're upsetting him." I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I couldn't believe what I just heard. "Mom, he's my brother. And right now he needs peace." I looked at Ryan again. He never defended me. He simply watched, almost amused. The elevator doors opened. The nurses rolled him inside. My parents stepped in after him. I moved forward. My father blocked the doorway with his arm. "There isn't room." "I'll take the stairs." "You won't." His voice was cold enough to stop me. "I came here because you called me. I called because I thought you should know." The elevator started closing. I instinctively placed one hand against the door. "Dad!" He looked directly into my eyes, then said the sentence I don't think I'll ever forget. "He's our priority." The doors closed between us. I stood there staring at my own reflection in the stainless steel. For several seconds, I couldn't move. One of the nurses touched my shoulder. "I'm sorry." I swallowed hard and walked toward the intensive care floor anyway. No matter what my parents thought, I was still his sister. As I reached the security doors, my father appeared again. "Didn't I tell you to leave?" "I'm just trying to see him. He doesn't need visitors." "I'm not a visitor." "No." He glanced toward the security desk. "You're becoming a problem." The guard hesitated. He looked at me, then at my father. "Sir, she says she's your daughter." For the first time that night, my father looked straight at me. His expression didn't change. "Not today." Everything around me seemed to go silent. The guard lowered his eyes before gently asking me to step back. People sitting in the waiting area had stopped talking. They were watching. A woman quietly whispered to her husband. Another nurse frowned. Nobody understood why a father would say that. Neither did I. I let the security officer escort me toward the elevators. Not because I wanted to leave, because I suddenly realized there was nowhere left for me inside that hospital. I had almost reached the main lobby when I heard someone calling behind me. "Miss Quaid." I turned. A hematologist hurried toward me, holding a tablet. He looked from the screen to my face, then back again. "You're Natalie Quaid?" "Yes." He hesitated for a second. "Do you know your blood type?" I answered automatically. "Oh, negative." The color drained from his face. He stared at the chart in silence, then looked back at me. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. "Please, don't leave town." I stood there long after the hematologist disappeared down the hallway. The only thing replaying in my head wasn't his question. It was my father's voice. "Not today. Not today." As if being his daughter was something he could switch on and off whenever it suited him. My phone vibrated. For one ridiculous second, I thought he was calling to apologize. Instead, it was a text from my mother. "Don't come back upstairs. Ryan needs calm, not more stress." I stared at the message. Not a single word asking if I'd made it safely. Not a single thank you for rushing there. Not even an explanation. Just another order. I almost laughed. Then I deleted the message without replying. Before I could leave, the hematologist returned. This time another physician walked beside him. "Miss Quaid." I nodded. "We'd like to repeat your blood typing." I frowned. "I already told you my type." "We know." "Then why repeat it?" The older doctor exchanged a quick look with his colleague. "Hospital protocol." It wasn't. I worked in healthcare long enough to recognize when someone was hiding the truth. But I followed them anyway. They led me into a small laboratory away from the emergency department. A nurse gently tied the tourniquet around my arm. As she prepared the needle, she smiled sympathetically. "I'm sorry about your family." I looked at her. "You saw that." The nurse hesitated. Half the waiting room did. The words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just humiliating anymore. It had become public. I watched the dark red blood slowly fill the collection tube. Something about the irony almost made me smile. The same family that couldn't stand beside me was now asking a hospital to take my blood. They just didn't know it yet. When the nurse removed the needle, she quietly squeezed my shoulder. "I hope things work out." I wasn't sure they ever could. Outside the lab, I heard Ray's voices echoing from the intensive care corridor. My parents. I recognized them instantly. Curiosity pulled me closer. The trauma surgeon stood facing both of them. "We're doing everything we can." "Then do more," my father shouted. "We need blood available before surgery. We're contacting every regional blood bank." "That's not fast enough." My mother was crying so hard she could barely speak. "There has to be someone." "There may be," the surgeon answered carefully. "But we need confirmation." Neither of them noticed me standing around the corner. My father slammed his fist against the wall. "This hospital keeps wasting time." The surgeon didn't react. Instead, he said something that made my stomach tighten. "Your son's blood type is extremely rare." Silence. Then, "We've already tested immediate relatives." I stopped breathing. Immediate relatives? No one had tested me. Not until after I had been thrown out. The surgeon continued. "We're waiting for one final confirmation." One final confirmation. Mine. I quietly stepped away before anyone could see me. 10 minutes later, the hematologist found me sitting alone near the hospital chapel. He wasn't smiling anymore. He closed the door behind him before speaking. The second test confirmed it. I already knew. Or maybe I didn't want to know. He slowly sat across from me. "Miss Quaid, you're the only confirmed compatible donor we've found." The room became completely silent. I looked down at my arm where the small bandage still covered the needle mark. My blood. Ryan's only chance. After everything that had happened upstairs. After my father had denied I was his daughter. After my mother told me I was only making things worse. Now, their son's life depended on something only I could give. The doctor waited patiently. He wasn't trying to pressure me. He simply wanted me to understand the situation. I assume your family already knows? He looked genuinely confused. No. I slowly raised my eyes. They don't. He shook his head. We wanted to speak with you first. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. Then he leaned forward. I need to ask an important question. If you agree to donate, we'll begin preparations immediately. If you don't, we'll continue searching. I closed my eyes. Every memory from that night rushed back at once. Don't make this about you. You're upsetting him. He's our priority. Not today. One sentence echoed louder than all the others. Not today. The doctor waited. No pressure. No guilt. Just silence. Finally, I opened my eyes. I need time. He nodded immediately. That's your right. No arguments. No disappointment. Just respect. As he stood to leave, he paused at the doorway. There is one thing you should know. I looked up. We haven't informed your family because we wanted your decision first. He hesitated, but once they find out, everything is going to change. He walked away. I remained completely still. For the first time that night, I wasn't the powerless daughter standing outside the ICU doors anymore. Without realizing it, my parents had handed me every ounce of power. They just hadn't discovered it yet. Then my phone started ringing again. This time, it was my father. My father's name kept flashing across my screen. Once, twice, 5 times. By the 10th call, I already knew something had changed upstairs. Not because he suddenly cared about me, because he needed something. I let the phone ring until it stopped. A second later, it started again. This time, it was my mother. I declined that call too. For nearly 20 minutes, neither of them left me alone. Calls, voicemails, messages. The same people who hadn't wanted me anywhere near Ryan's room suddenly couldn't stop trying to reach me. It wasn't an apology. I knew my parents too well. When they wanted forgiveness, they demanded it. When they wanted help, they disguised it as love. I finally opened the last voicemail. Natalie, where are you? My mother's trembling voice asked. The doctors have more questions about Ryan's medical history. You worked in healthcare. Please, just come upstairs. No, I'm sorry. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just another request. I deleted the message. Minutes later, the hematologist returned with another member of the transplant team. We're monitoring Ryan closely, he said. He's stable for now, but he's lost more blood than we expected. How long do I have to decide? He didn't answer immediately. Hours. Not days. Hours. The word echoed in my mind. He handed me a folder explaining the donation process, then quietly left me alone again. For the first time all night, someone had treated me like I had a choice. Not an obligation. A choice. I was still staring at the paperwork when the elevator doors opened. Ryan's best friend rushed into the waiting area. His shirt was stained with dried blood. He looked terrified. I recognized him immediately. Logan. He didn't notice me as he hurried toward the ICU. Less than a minute later, shouting erupted down the hallway. You let him drive, my father roared. I tried to stop him. You should have taken his keys. He wouldn't listen. You left him alone. The argument grew louder. Doctors began closing nearby patient doors. Visitors turned to look. Then Ryan's voice cut through everything. Weak. Angry. Still unmistakably arrogant. Stop blaming him. The hallway fell silent. A nurse tried to calm him down. He ignored her. It wasn't Logan's fault. Another pause. Then came the sentence that made every head turn. I would have driven anyway. No remorse. No regret. No concern for the people now fighting to save his life. Just pride. Even lying in a hospital bed, Ryan refused to admit he'd made a mistake. The surgeon stepped into the hallway moments later. His face alone told everyone the situation had become worse. We need to prepare for emergency surgery. My mother immediately grabbed his arm. He's going to be okay, right? We're doing everything possible. You keep saying that. Because it's the truth. My father stepped closer. What aren't you telling us? The surgeon looked at both of them before answering. Ryan's condition has become more complicated. What does that mean? It means we cannot move forward unless we solve the compatibility issue. My father frowned. I thought you had blood. We have some, but not enough. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I'd experienced that night. Then the surgeon noticed me standing at the end of the corridor. Our eyes met, only for a second. He immediately looked away. He understood. My parents didn't. Not yet. I quietly returned to the small family lounge, hoping to avoid another confrontation. I had barely sat down when someone pushed the door open. Ryan. Not walking. His bed was being moved toward imaging before surgery. For a brief moment, we were completely alone in the hallway. He looked at me without the slightest hint of gratitude. I heard you've been hiding. I almost laughed. Hiding? Mom said you disappeared. She forgot the part where Dad had security remove me. He shrugged as if that detail meant nothing. You always make everything dramatic. I stared at him in disbelief. You almost killed yourself driving drunk. And somehow this conversation is about me? He smirked. You've always loved playing the victim. The orderly pushing his bed looked visibly uncomfortable. Even he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Ryan leaned his head slightly closer. You know what's funny? I said nothing. No matter what happens, Mom and Dad will always choose me. Those words should have hurt. Instead, they did something unexpected. They made me completely calm. Because for the first time all night, I knew something he didn't. He believed my parents still held all the power. They didn't. The orderly pushed him away before he could say anything else. Less than 5 minutes later, I heard hurried footsteps racing toward the consultation room. Voices. Several doctors. The hematologist. The trauma surgeon. Then my father's voice. What do you mean she's the only match? Silence. Then my mother whispered something, so quietly I almost missed it. Natalie! The next sound wasn't crying. It wasn't yelling. It was the frantic pounding of footsteps. They weren't running toward Ryan anymore. They were running. Toward me. The footsteps stopped only a few feet away from me. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in less than a minute. My mother's mascara had run down both cheeks. Neither of them spoke immediately. For the first time that night, they didn't seem to know what to say. The hematologist stepped between us. Mr. and Mrs. Quaid. I've already explained the situation. My father slowly looked at me, then at the doctor, then back at me again. No. His voice barely came out. Run the test again. The doctor didn't react. We already did. Then do it a third time. We did. Silence. The results were confirmed by 2 separate laboratories. My father shook his head. There has to be another donor. We've contacted every available blood bank. No. There has to be somebody else. There isn't. The hallway became unbearably quiet. Then the doctor said the sentence that changed everything. Right now, your daughter is Ryan's only compatible donor. Nobody moved. Not even my mother. It was as if those words refused to fit inside her mind. Finally, she turned toward me. Natalie! She took one hesitant step, then another. I instinctively stepped back. She noticed. Her face tightened. I know tonight has been difficult. Difficult. That was the word she chose. Not humiliating. Not cruel. Not unforgivable. Just difficult. I need you to listen. No. The word came out before she finished. Both of them froze. It was probably the first time in my life I'd interrupted my mother. She tried again. Ryan is your brother. And her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I looked at my father. You had security remove me. His eyes immediately dropped to the floor. I was emotional. You told them I wasn't your daughter. You don't understand the pressure I was under. I almost smiled. No. You don't understand what those words cost. Another heavy silence settled over the hallway. Then, everything changed. Ryan's room door opened. Against every medical instruction, he had pulled himself out of bed. 1-4 pole rolled beside him. A nurse desperately tried to stop him. Mr. Quaid, you need to get back in bed. He ignored her completely. His eyes found me. So, he let out a weak laugh. I guess they finally told you. No apology. Not even close. He looked directly at me. You've got my blood. I stared at him. No. I've got yours. For the first time all night, his smile disappeared. Our eyes locked. He realized exactly what I meant. My blood was inside me. His life wasn't. He took another slow step. I don't know what stupid point you're trying to prove, but stop wasting everyone's time. The nurse looked horrified. Ryan. He raised his voice. Just donate the damn blood. Every person in the hallway turned to look at him. Doctors, patients, visitors. Even the receptionist stopped typing. He wasn't asking. He was ordering me, just like he always had. My father quickly stepped between us. Ryan. No. Ryan pointed directly at me. She's my sister. She has to do it. Has to. I felt something inside me finally break. Not with anger. With clarity. I looked at every member of my family, then calmly asked one question. If our places were reversed, would Ryan do this for me? Nobody answered. I looked at my mother. She lowered her head. I looked at my father. His silence answered for him. Finally, I looked back at Ryan. He rolled his eyes. That's not the same. Why? It just isn't. I nodded slowly. Exactly. The surgeon stepped forward. Everyone needs to calm down. Ryan immediately turned toward him. Tell her she has to. The surgeon's expression hardened. No. Ryan blinked. What? The doctor didn't raise his voice. Blood donation is voluntary. No one can force her. My father stepped closer. There has to be something you can do. There isn't. We're his parents. I understand. Then make her understand. The surgeon looked directly at him. I can't. And neither can you. Those words landed like a hammer. For the first time that night, my parents understood something money, authority, and guilt couldn't change. They had absolutely no control over me. Ryan slammed his hand against the four-pole. This is insane. She's seriously going to let me die over one stupid argument? One stupid argument. I almost laughed. Was that what years of humiliation had become? An argument? I slowly walked toward him until we were only a few feet apart. Then I said quietly enough that only my family could hear. You looked me in the eyes tonight, while Dad told security I wasn't his daughter. I paused. You didn't say a single word. Ryan swallowed. It was almost invisible. But I saw it. For the first time, he wasn't completely sure I would save him. Before anyone could say another word, the hematologist hurried back into the corridor, holding another set of test results. His expression was far more serious than before. He looked at me first, then at Ryan. Finally, he turned to my parents. I'm afraid there's another complication. The entire hallway went silent. What complication? My father asked. The doctor took a slow breath. Ryan won't need just one donation. If he survives surgery, he'll need Natalie again. The hallway remained frozen. Nobody spoke after the hematologist's announcement. Ryan wouldn't need just one transfusion. If he survived the surgery, he would need me again, and possibly again after that. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, fear appeared on Ryan's face, not because he was dying, because he had finally realized something he had never experienced before. He wasn't in control anymore. The surgeon looked around before speaking. Ryan needs to be taken back immediately. Two nurses gently turned his bed around. Ryan never took his eyes off me. As they pushed him toward the operating room, he raised his voice. Natalie! I didn't answer. You can't seriously walk away from this. I remained exactly where I was. You hear me? His voice cracked. You don't get to punish me like this. The automatic doors closed between us. For the first time in his life, Ryan had spoken to me, and I hadn't responded. That silence hurt him far more than any argument ever could. Almost immediately, my mother grabbed my hands. They were freezing. Natalie, please. I slowly pulled them away. No. Tears streamed down her face. I know we've made mistakes. Mistakes. I looked directly into her eyes. You watched Dad tell security I wasn't his daughter. You said I was upsetting Ryan. You texted me not to come back. I took one slow step closer. And less than an hour later, "You needed my blood." She couldn't answer, because there was no answer. My father suddenly reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out his wallet, then a checkbook. My stomach turned. "What are you doing?" He started writing. His hand was shaking, so badly that the pen barely stayed on the paper. "You've always wanted your own clinic." I stared at him. "I can make that happen." He finished writing, tore the check out, held it toward me. "I don't care how much. You name the number." For a second, I genuinely wondered if he believed money could erase everything that had happened. I looked at the check, then back at him. "You think this is about money? It's about saving Ryan." "No, it's about buying me." His face tightened. "I'm trying to save my son, and I'm your daughter." Neither of us moved. Finally, I reached for the check. Hope instantly appeared on both of my parents' faces. I looked at the amount. Without saying a word, I tore it cleanly in half, then into 4 pieces, then 8. The scraps drifted to the floor between us. Nobody spoke. Even the nurses walking by slowed down. My father stared at the torn paper as though he'd never been told no before. His face slowly turned red. "This isn't who we raised." The sentence made me laugh. A short, disbelieving laugh. "You stopped raising me years ago." His jaw clenched. "You've become cold." "No. I finally stopped begging for your warmth." Before he could answer, another voice interrupted us. An older woman hurried down the corridor. My Aunt Linda, my mother's older sister. She rushed straight toward me and wrapped her arms around me before I could react. "Oh, sweetheart, I heard everything." I stood completely still. She had never hugged me before. Not once. Then she whispered into my ear, "Please don't do this to your mother." There it was. Not concern. Not love. Another mission. Another person sent to convince me. She stepped back, still holding my shoulders. "Families forgive." I quietly nodded. "They do. So you'll help." "I didn't say that." Her expression changed instantly. "You'd really let your own brother die?" The question echoed through the hallway. Several visitors looked in our direction. Exactly what she wanted. Public pressure. Public guilt. I looked around at everyone watching us, then answered loud enough for every one of them to hear. "My father had security remove me tonight." Silence. "My mother told me I wasn't helping by being here." More silence. "My brother ordered me to donate like I was his property." Nobody looked at me anymore. They looked at my parents. My aunt slowly lowered her hands. She hadn't expected me to answer. She'd expected me to cry. Instead, I told the truth, one sentence at a time, without raising my voice, without insulting anyone. The silence became unbearable. Then, the operating room doors burst open. The trauma surgeon walked out much faster than before. His mask was still hanging around his neck. His expression was grim. He looked directly at me. Not my parents. Me. "We have a problem." Every heartbeat inside my chest seemed to stop. My father rushed toward him. "What happened?" The surgeon didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on me. Ryan started bleeding again. He took one slow breath. "We're running out of time." The surgeon's words echoed through the hallway. "We're running out of time." No one moved. My father grabbed the surgeon by both arms. "What do you need?" "We need to stop the bleeding." "Then stop it." "We're trying." "What about the transfusion?" The surgeon looked at him with remarkable patience. "I've already explained that." My father slowly turned toward me. His eyes no longer carried authority, only panic. "Natalie!" He took 2 hesitant steps forward. "I'm asking you as your father." I looked at him. "No." His shoulders dropped. "Please." That single word surprised everyone. I'd never heard Afonso Quaid beg for anything. But before I could answer, another voice interrupted. "She doesn't have a choice." A tall man in a dark suit was walking quickly toward us. Hospital administration. An ethics coordinator followed just behind him. For one brief second, my father smiled. He actually believed someone had come to force me. The administrator stopped in front of us. "Miss Quaid." "Yes. We've been informed there's some confusion." My father immediately pointed at me. She's refusing to help. The man nodded calmly, then turned to me. I want to make something absolutely clear. He spoke slowly, making sure everyone heard. No hospital, no physician, no family member, and no court can force you to donate your blood. The hallway fell completely silent. My father's face emptied. What? Blood donation requires voluntary consent. There has to be an exception. There isn't. My son will die. I understand. Then do something. I just did. He looked directly at me. Miss Quaid, if anyone pressures, threatens, or harasses you, hospital security will remove them. This time, security wasn't there for me. It was there for them. I almost noticed the irony before another alarm echoed through the surgical wing. Several nurses sprinted past us. One of them shouted, "Massive hemorrhage!" Every face turned toward the operating room. The surgeon immediately disappeared through the doors. Seconds later, my mother's knees gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, crying, sobbing, repeating Ryan's name over and over. Visitors rushed to help her. My father remained frozen. For the first time in his life, there was nothing he could control. Minutes dragged by. Nobody spoke. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. "This is Natalie." "Miss Quaid." The voice was calm. "I'm Officer Daniel Reeves." My stomach tightened. "I'm following up on your brother's collision." "What about it?" "We've completed the preliminary reconstruction." I glanced toward my parents. Neither could hear me. "There are details your family may not know." My heart started racing. "What details?" "We recovered traffic camera footage." And a brief silence. "Your brother wasn't simply driving under the influence." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He was fleeing." Everything around me disappeared. "Fleeing?" "Yes." He attempted to evade a police traffic stop. I couldn't speak. The officer continued. He accelerated instead. He crossed multiple intersections. He ignored emergency lights. He continued for almost 4 miles. I closed my eyes. Then came the sentence that changed everything. The crash happened while officers were trying to stop him. This wasn't an accident. Ryan hadn't lost control. He had chosen to run. I thanked the officer and ended the call. Almost immediately, my father walked toward me. "What was that?" I looked at him. "You really don't know?" His expression changed. "Know what?" I took a slow breath. Ryan wasn't just drunk. My mother looked up from the floor. "What are you talking about?" "He was running from the police." Silence. "He tried to escape." "No." My mother whispered. "That's impossible." "It isn't." My father immediately shook his head. "Someone lied to you." I spoke to the officer handling the investigation. He wouldn't. My father couldn't even finish the sentence. Because deep down, he knew exactly what Ryan was capable of. Before anyone could respond, another doctor hurried out of surgery, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Inside it, still stained with blood, was Ryan's wallet. The doctor walked straight toward my father. "We found something your son asked us to give the police." My father took the bag with trembling hands. Inside, along with Ryan's driver's license, was a folded sheet of paper. The doctor frowned. "It appears to be a handwritten statement." My father unfolded it. His face instantly lost all color. My mother looked over his shoulder. Then she screamed. "What is it?" I asked. My father slowly lowered the paper. For the first time that night, he looked terrified of his own son. Ryan admitted this wasn't the first time he'd driven drunk, and wrote that if anything ever happened, he didn't want anyone blaming him but himself. No one spoke. My father kept staring at the folded confession in his hands as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. They didn't. My mother reached for the paper with trembling fingers. She read every line, then read it again. Tears streamed down her face. He wouldn't write this. The trauma surgeon looked at her quietly. "It was found inside his wallet." "No, he loved us." The surgeon didn't answer. Because that wasn't what the letter said. Ryan hadn't written about his family. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't expressed regret. The entire statement was about one thing: responsibility. If he died, no one else was to blame. Not his parents, not the police, not the hospital. Him. For the first time that night, my parents had proof that every excuse they built around Ryan had collapsed. Before anyone could process it, the operating room doors opened again. A critical care physician stepped outside. "Ryan is awake." My mother rushed forward. "Can we see him?" "For a few minutes." She grabbed my father's hand. Both started walking. Then the doctor looked at me. "He asked for you too." Every eye in the hallway turned toward me. I hadn't expected that. Neither had my parents. For a second, none of us moved. Finally I nodded. "I'll go." The room was almost unrecognizable. Machines surrounded Ryan from every direction. Monitors beeped steadily. Blood transfusion lines hung beside his bed. His skin had lost almost all its color. He looked weaker than I'd ever seen him. But the moment he noticed me, he smiled, not with relief, with arrogance. The nurse quietly left us alone. Ryan looked at our parents first, then back at me. "So, I guess everybody knows now." No one answered. He chuckled weakly. "It really doesn't matter." My father stepped closer. "Ryan, why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what?" "The police. The drinking. The other times." Ryan shrugged. "I knew you'd overreact." "Overreact?" My father's voice cracked. "You could have killed someone." "But I didn't." The room fell silent. He said it so casually, as if that settled everything. "You almost killed yourself," my mother whispered. Ryan rolled his eyes. "I'm still here." That sentence broke something inside my father. For the first time in my life, I watched Afonso Quaid slap his own son. The sound echoed through the room. Nobody moved. Ryan slowly turned back toward him, then laughed. Actually laughed. "About time." My father stared at his own hand in disbelief. Ryan looked directly at him. "You've wanted to do that for years." Nobody breathed. "You just never had the courage." Those words landed harder than the slap itself. My father staggered backward. Ryan wasn't defending himself. He was exposing him. "You always knew what I was. You just kept cleaning up after me." My mother's face turned white. "Ryan." "No." He interrupted her. "You paid lawyers. You paid damages. You called people. You fixed everything." His breathing became heavier. "But this time," he looked toward me, "you couldn't fix it." The room became unbearably quiet. Then he smiled again, a smile that made my skin crawl. "You know what's funny, Natalie?" I didn't answer. "I still think you'll save me." My father immediately looked at me. Not with anger. Not anymore. With fear. Real fear. Ryan kept talking. "Because that's what you've always done. You always cleaned up the mess. I never had to." He leaned back against the pillow. "You'll do it again." For the first time, I walked closer to his bed, close enough that only he could hear me. "You still don't understand." His smile faded slightly. "You think this is about blood." I shook my head. "It isn't. It's about consequences." He stared at me, confused. "For the first time in your life, you don't get to decide what happens next." Something changed in his eyes. Very small, but unmistakable. Doubt. The first crack in his confidence. Just then, the hematologist entered carrying new lab results. He looked at me. "Miss Quaid, we've prepared everything in case you decide to donate." He didn't pressure me. He simply informed me. Ryan immediately looked between us, then back at me. His confidence disappeared. "What?" He swallowed. "What do you mean?" "If." No one answered. His breathing became faster. He looked at our parents. "Dad." Silence. "Mom." Neither of them spoke, because for the first time, they understood exactly what I had understood hours earlier. Nobody could force me. Ryan looked back at me. This time, there was no arrogance left, only panic. "Natalie." His voice cracked. "Please." The word barely escaped his mouth. It was the first genuine plea I'd ever heard from him. I looked into his eyes, then quietly asked, "Do you remember what Dad told security?" His expression froze. Not today. A tear rolled down my mother's face. I took one slow step backward. You weren't my family then. Another step. So don't suddenly remember I'm your sister. Because you need what's in my veins. The monitor beside Ryan suddenly emitted a sharp, continuous alarm. One long, piercing tone. Nurses rushed into the room. A doctor shouted, "He's crashing!" Another yelled, "Loss of pressure!" Within seconds, people surrounded Ryan's bed. Someone pushed all of us toward the door. The last thing I saw before it closed was a nurse beginning chest compressions. Then the surgeon turned toward me. His face was completely pale. "Natalie, if you're going to make your decision, it has to be now." The surgeon didn't blink. "If you're going to make your decision, it has to be now." Nobody breathed. The hallway that had been filled with shouting only minutes earlier was suddenly silent. My mother grabbed my arm, so tightly that her nails dug into my skin. "Natalie, please." She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for blood. My father stood beside her without saying a word. His shoulders were slumped. His eyes were red. The man who had ordered security to remove me only hours earlier now looked completely broken. For several long seconds, I looked at both of them. Then, I slowly pulled my arm away. I turned around and started walking toward the exit. Behind me, I heard my mother scream my name. "Natalie!" I didn't stop. My father shouted next. "Please, still." I kept walking. Every step echoed through the nearly empty corridor. 1, 2, 3. By the time I reached the lobby, I heard the operating room doors burst open again. Someone was running. "Natalie!" It wasn't my parents. It was the surgeon. I stopped. He caught up to me, breathing heavily. "I'm not here to change your mind." I looked at him. He continued, "I only need to know one thing, so my team knows what to do next." He didn't beg. He didn't guilt me. He didn't even mention Ryan. He simply waited. That was the difference. Everyone else wanted something from me. He respected that the decision belonged to me. I closed my eyes. For the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about Ryan. I was thinking about myself. About every time I'd convinced myself that if I worked harder, loved harder, forgave faster, my family would finally choose me. They never had. Not once. Not even tonight. They only remembered I existed when my blood became valuable. I opened my eyes. "I'll donate." The surgeon nodded once. "Thank you." He turned to leave. "Doctor." He stopped. "This doesn't change anything. I understand. I'm not doing it because they deserve it. I know. I'm doing it because I refuse to become the kind of person they always believed I was." For the first time, he smiled, not because Ryan had been saved, because he knew I had just saved something much more important. Myself. The donation began less than 20 minutes later. No one from my family was allowed inside. That had been my condition. No conversations. No apologies. No tears beside the bed. Only the medical team. When it was over, I rested for a short time before the surgeon returned. The transfusion was successful. I simply nodded. "And Ryan, he's alive. Alive. Not healed. Not forgiven. Just alive." I thanked him, gathered my things, and walked toward the parking lot. Halfway there, I heard footsteps behind me. My father. He stopped several feet away. "I don't expect forgiveness." I kept walking. "I just need you to know." His voice cracked. "I've spent my whole life believing Ryan needed me more." I finally turned around. He looked older than he had that morning. Smaller. I was wrong. I didn't answer. Because some realizations come too late. He lowered his head. "I lost my daughter. Long before tonight." He wasn't asking me to come home. For the first time, he understood there was no home left to return to. 3 months later, Ryan survived. The criminal investigation didn't disappear because he recovered. The letter found in his wallet became part of the case. He eventually pleaded guilty to driving under the influence, attempting to evade police, and several related charges. For once, there was no one left to make the consequences disappear. My mother visited him every week. My father visited less and less, not because he loved his son less, but because every visit reminded him of the price of never telling him no. As for me, I went back to work, back to the patients who thanked me, back to the life I'd spent years putting on hold for people who only remembered my worth when they needed something from me. I never moved back. I never rebuilt the relationship. Some bridges aren't destroyed in a single night. They're burned one choice at a time. Months later, I received one final message from my father. Just one sentence. "I finally understand what I took from you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I locked my phone. No reply. Some people think revenge is making someone suffer. They were wrong. The greatest revenge is forcing someone to live with the truth they spent a lifetime refusing to see. 3 days after my parents told security I wasn't their daughter, they begged for my blood. I gave them what Ryan needed to survive, but the daughter they threw away that night never came back.